The Royals are more than halfway through the 162-game schedule, and All-Star Week is approaching. Typically, that's a time to begin seeing some roster movement from baseball teams that aren't in contention. And the Royals are quickly sinking in the AL Central. So, what direction do the Royals take to get the most from the second half of the season? We discussed that on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast, with beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnist Vahe Gregorian. It's Tuesday, July 6th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. The program started as a SportsBeat Live, and we had plenty of comments and questions, so let's get started. Good morning from sunny Kansas City. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly conversation about the Royals with those in the media who know them best, and with you. Please send us your questions and comments, and we'll talk Royals with you as well. Today we have columnist Vahe Gregorian. What's up, Vahe?
Good to be seen. Good to see you.
Lynn Worthy is here, beat writer. Hey, Lynn.
Hey, what's up?
Good to see you. Sam Mellinger decided not to join us today, but that's so Sam. That is so Sam. No, he's on vacation. We'll catch up with Sam again next week. Hey, before we get started, big shout out to our sponsors, the University of Kansas Health System. You will hear from them later in the show. So I said that we want to hear from you, and we've already heard from many of you so far, and you're not happy. And Steve, Doug, Todd, we hear you. We hear you. We're going to talk about, we got a lot of things to talk about today, a lot to catch up on. I had to write it down because I had lost track of the streaks, but after ending the nine-game losing streak against the Twins on Friday night, the Royals have now lost 2 in a row, 11 of 13, 23 of 29, and they are 14 games under 500, and I believe in last place in the American League Central. I think they're back in last after climbing out of last place in those two wins over the Twins. And of course, they had that 15-1 loss to the Red Sox last week as well. So, but there is some news, positive news. Andrew Benintendi is back, and Lynn, you talked to Benintendi on Monday before the Reds game. He'd been out since, I want to say, June 13th with the fractured rib. Came back a little sooner than I thought. What did he tell you?
Yeah, he said that he actually was feeling better sooner than he expected. So I was talking to him yesterday after batting practice. Yesterday he didn't play. It was a scheduled day off. Mike Matheny said that the plan all along was going to be he's going to play a day and then have a day off, and then they were going to see how he felt and make sure that everything was okay and reassess from there. But I talked to him after batting practice, and he was good to go. He was talking about, he felt great. Soreness was gone. He talked about just, the injury had been something that he had been feeling for maybe as much as 2 weeks before he actually went on the IL. It just got to the point where breathing, coughing, sneezing, like he was in pain just doing all those things. And I mean, breathing's pretty important. So I would think, pain breathing is not something that you really want to play through. And so it got to the point that he had to call the trainers and let them know what was going on. And that's where the IL stint went. But he started feeling pretty good. He said, and I think Mike Matheny had said before that he was starting to lobby him before they, came back from that road trip to get back on the field. But I asked Benny about that because, that trip ended in Boston, his old
right.
team. And I said, was that, something you were shooting for? He said, no, not really. He said, I wasn't going to do anything stupid. Like, I was going to listen to the medical staff and everything. But he was feeling better sooner than he expected.
I didn't realize until I think I read it in your story that the Royals had used 5 different left fielders in his spot. 5 different guys had started in left field. Usual suspects like Merrifield and O'Hearn had started in left, and Olivares had started there. Dyson had started a game. Dozier. Yeah, I mean, it just shows a little bit about the fragility of this team, that they have one of their starters go down, and they've got to mix and match and put all, because now there's a domino effect, right, with other positions, and we've seen it in right field, left field, kind of everywhere, really, with this team. First base, a lot going on. Okay, a couple other things before we get to the main topic, which will address the concerns of many of you. Looks like Scott Barlow is now the closer. were they so soured on Greg Holland's performance when he blew that save in New York in Game 2 of that series that it's just been sort of a little bit of a revolving door at closer anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing a little bit when you said that, just because since the beginning of the season, that idea of closer is just not, like, there's not going to be a designated closer. And I've said that since the beginning of the season. It's something Mike Matheny has said going back to his first year, last year. Like, if you're looking for one guy that's going to be the closer, even if you say right now Scott Barlow is the closer, well, I would not be surprised at all if tonight, when it comes down to it, you see Barlow in, a different role, and then somebody else is called on at the end of the game. So there's not going to be a set guy. It's just not, the way that they feel like this bullpen is set up. Even last year, I mean, they sort of settled into where Rosenthal was that guy when he was still on the roster,
Right.
but there was days that, he didn't close games. They went to Holland. So it's just, they don't feel like they have that. I mean, probably if Starmont was 100% healthy and, doing what he had done in the past, he'd probably be that guy. And we saw where it looked like he was the closer at one point. And I started getting that question from people, oh, is he the closer now? And there is no closer. I think one point early in the season when they were, actually playing really well and winning games, and I think Salvi had like 2 walk-offs in like a week. I was like, Salvi's your closer. That's so. But yeah, there's not going to be a guy. But Barlow, I mean, he's as consistently, efficient and as good as they've got that bullpen guy who, I think Witt was just tweeting yesterday about how he should have been an all-star.
What do you think they lose or do or don't miss by not having a guy that can actually just sort of declare that way? What is the material difference in it?
I don't know if there is one, to be honest. I think the way that they had gone with the sort of the high leverage thing where it's like, okay, I guess if you had a stat, like they had, the HDH or something like that, then sure, you settle guys into roles and guys get comfortable. They know they're going to pitch around a certain time. They know when to get ready, and everybody's sort of comfortable, and it's sort of a rhythm to it. But I think the high leverage thing, it makes sense because it's, if the innings that are most important are the 6th or 7th, right, and you blow it then you're not bringing in the closer anyway in the ninth. Right. So what is it? But he's the closer. So yeah, he's sitting on the bench, watching the end of the game, and you guys lose by 5. So I mean, but they just don't have that sort of a stacked group like you had back in the day to warrant that being the case.
Well, and one problem that's affected the development of the bullpen is the ineffectiveness of the starters as well. Until the last couple of days, where Keller went into the 7th inning Sunday and Minor went into the 7th inning last night. You've got guys, going, out in the 3rd, 4th innings. So now you're using 5 guys out of the bullpen and really, making things difficult, I think, for Mike Matheny and bullpen choices.
What was that? I think the stat was a month of June stat where they had
a lot of good ones, a lot of good stats.
A lot to work with,
yeah.
But it was something, just completely affirming your point. I mean, I think it was the fewest amount of started innings, if that's the right term, in the American League, or certainly among the fewest.
That sounds about right, yeah. Especially since you've got some openers going there, and then you had...
Yeah.
And June was obviously like, you had some Coar starts in there where he went, 2 starts that
right.
Together, I think, were 2 innings in length. And so, I mean, when you put openers, you put starters who don't
Duffy
get out
was
of the
hurt,
first.
and
You get Duffy, and then his... even the comeback, the comeback starts where he's only going 2 or 3 innings. So and all those innings get covered by the bullpen. So I mean, if a guy only goes 2 innings, that means the bullpen's covering 7. And so everybody's like, oh, well, why can't they use this guy? That guy's like, well, they only have so many guys in the bullpen. So I mean, it's not as though they've got. I mean, even the guys who can give you multiple innings, they can't do it every day. Like you can't. Urban Santana cannot throw 3 innings every other day. That's not going to work. So
yeah. It's funny when I see Urban Santana out there. I know the Royals are behind, and usually it's about the 4th or 5th inning. Although he was in last night later in the game. Next week is All-Star Weekend, and Merrifield did tweet about Barlow. If there was a second Royal to be named to the All-Star team, Barlow would have been as decent a candidate as anybody's Royals pitcher of the month for May and June. I don't know what that says, but he was. And I think a light case could have been made for Merrifield or maybe even Duffy if it hadn't been for the injury. But the Royals didn't really deserve a second player on the All-Star team. Do you think?
Not sort of for the broader body of work. Like sometimes you have that feeling like the broader body of work just deserves a second, but certainly that doesn't hold up. And I think you laid out the people that you would think of. I really feel bad for Danny because I think Danny was on track to that possibility until he got hurt. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out, but his numbers were pretty good. And
still are. I mean, for the limited...
still are, but it's just a limited subset. I don't know, Lynn, do you think something more or different?
It would have been interesting if Benintendi had stayed healthy. I don't think he necessarily would have made it just because in the outfield there's so many guys, and you look at the outfield all as just one big group, and there's going to be a lot of power numbers that come into that category too. And obviously that's not quite his game, but it would have been interesting to see like if he, that last month that he was healthy, he was hitting like over 300, and his on base was ridiculous, and so like if he had done that for a whole other month, because he missed 18 games, and at the end, like I say, he was playing through a little bit of something. So I mean, if he had been healthy that whole time, there might have been a case. Again, if the team's record is what it is, I don't think it would have been that strong a case. And then again, the outfield's a big group of you get some sluggers out there.
He had a couple of Oppo home runs too. During this hot streak, which I thought he's really on the ball when he's going opposite way with power, and was impressive until he got hurt out in Oakland. So the All-Star game's on the horizon, and it's going to include Salvador Perez not only as the starting catcher, but in the home run derby. That'll be fun. At least we give Royals fans something to watch on. I think it's Monday night, right? The home run derby, I think.
I think so.
Out of Coors Field, so fun place to have a home run derby as well. He was, we found out Friday he was going to be in it. First time for him and only the fourth Royal ever to participate in the home run derby. This was before you got here, Vahe, year before you got here, but Billy Butler was on his way to becoming a member of the home run derby lineup until Captain Robinson Cano decided not to select Billy Butler, and Kansas City fans being what they are, booed the hell out of Robinson Cano during the home run derby, and he was fouling pitches back. Anyway, we might be able to talk about that next week during the All-Star week, but it was funny. But the bigger point, and I think the more important point about All-Star weekend is not the home run derby is going to be fun, Salvy's starting in the All-Star game, but it's the Futures game. And the Royals are going to have two players in the Futures game, Bobby Witt Jr. and Nick Pratto. So that'll be fun. And I don't know, Lynn, seems like we do talk about this a lot, but I don't know if we'll see them in Royals uniforms this year, but we're going to see them in Storm Chasers uniforms, aren't we?
I would say so, definitely. I'm just not sure what the timing was or is going to be, but I mean, you'd think after the Futures game, I would assume they'd also be in line. I'm not sure how the AA All-Star setup is going to work this year because the minor leagues are reorganized, but I know that in the past, I'd seen minor league organizations, not necessarily the Royals, but where they would let guys stay in the spot for the first half of the year, get some of the accolades, do some of the adjustments, all that sort of stuff. And then after that All-Star game, you start to see guys in late June, July. Of course, that would be in the typical schedule. This is also a year where they didn't start playing games until later. But you'd see those guys start to move up to the next level, and then that group below them move up to that level. So I wouldn't be surprised if you saw something like that, and you start seeing those guys get up to AAA, get their feet wet there, and whether or not you still see the September call-up, I mean, I think it's still in play. But I would expect they're going to be in AAA. I mean, I think I made the joke before with Vahe, that AA murderers row. You gotta, at some point, some of those guys are gonna have to move. I mean, I think I'm not sure what coaching tips you gave them when you went out to Northwest Arkansas, but
well, I can safely say I learned more from Bobby Witt than he learned from me. And if you use this line that I use from him about you're either winning or you're learning, I think about that all the time when I'm maybe not winning.
But you're learning.
Let's just say I think about that all the time.
Hey, speaking of one other thing with this, and I don't think Dayton did speak to it Friday, but I wasn't there. But all along he has sort of alluded to June 30th as being at the end of June, we'll maybe reevaluate, sort of specific to the context of Witt, but I assume that involves Nick Pratto too at this point. Like, it would be my thought that it might be more somewhat imminent that they might be on the way to Omaha, but I don't know. I mean, I just don't think it's been restated in the last few weeks, but that would be my hunch.
Well, maybe it's like Lynn said, right after the Futures game,
Yeah,
and then figure out what's going on with the AA All-Star All-Star game,
that's
which I
about
don't know. So, but yeah, we are definitely going to see them in AA, and who knows what happens in September, right? I mean, that would be the next interesting date. Okay, let's take a break here. Let's hear from our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System, and when we come back, we'll address these questions, and I want to talk to Lynn and Vahe about what the Royals should do in the second half of the season.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, we're back with Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian. We're talking Royals. They on was it Friday? One day during the Twins series, they played their 81st and 82nd game, which is the halfway point of and starting of the second half of the season. And feelings have changed about the team through each month. Right, they're in first place at the end of April, and then May and June have fallen into last place. So I think we're beyond the idea of them being a playoff team in 2021. I know I'm stating the obvious, but if assume that's the case, what should the Royals do in the second half of 2021, assuming changes are coming and young players are going to be at what point does 2022 become or 2021 become an audition for 2022? And if it is, what positions are we really looking at, and what players might we be looking at as for next season? Lynn, I'll start with you. What do you think?
I'm not sure if audition is the way I'd look at it.
Audition's probably the wrong word.
Yeah,
but just
I guess
getting major league prep.
I think the way I would think of it is more of guys getting, continuing that, I guess the phrase that you hear the Royals use is to transition into the major leagues, because even if guys that they'll likely see the second half, or you'd think you'd see in the second half, I don't know that what you see in that second half is going to be the finished product of those guys, and it's really going to be more getting them geared towards next year, getting them, the innings, the reps, getting them comfortable for when they do need them to be at their best. And I just don't know if you're going to see guys at their best even at the end of the season. Because if you bring up, I don't think it's going to happen, but if you bring up Bobby Witt on, say, July 1st, say he's in the major leagues, like, okay, even if you did that, what you see of Bobby Witt for the last couple of months isn't necessarily what Bobby's going to be. And maybe, but I don't think it is. You go around and you look at, say, a guy like Seattle had Jared Kelenic. He was a guy that was a big name, and he was sort of the poster child for they're holding him in the minors to manipulate his service time. And then he came up, And they ended up sending him back down because he just struggled. Now, nobody's saying, okay, he's done, he's not going to be anything. He's still one of the best prospects in baseball. He's still, viewed as a rising star. It's just going to be, it's going to take more time, or he's going to have to make some adjustments and come back up and reacclimate. And so what you saw that first time he came up wasn't, at least in theory, what you're going to see of Jared Kalenic. So whether that's Bobby, whether that's some of these pitchers, I think of the example, I know the Royals have used the number, like it takes, I think Ned and Dayton have used this before. You guys will probably remember what they say usually it takes almost 2 years for the guy to be a full big leaguer. And I was thinking about that just because I'm looking at like Nicky Lopez, who he had about a full season's worth of games at the end of last year because of the shortened season and when he came up the year before. And now you're starting to see the guy that people sort of thought he was. Not that he's an all-star. He's a really good, player all around. He can contribute offensively. We've seen him do different things. He's playing out of position defensively, but he was a Gold Glove caliber second baseman. But that's, he came up in 19, and you're just now getting to that. So I think the second half of the season, whether it's the pitchers, whether it's position players, it's not going to be like, okay, we're going to find out what they're going to look like going forward. It's really just going to be the acclimation to the big league. So I think that's something that people have to keep in mind.
I think just attached to that, it's kind of it's a really interesting question. If you accept I like that argument too. It's going to take you 2 years to be there. But that's, of course, if you're going to be a big league player, like if it's going to work. And I do wonder what the threshold is, especially in this situation, for how much failure at the big league level is more worthwhile than success at the minor league level. I don't know. It's not like a one or the other proposition, but I do think that's part of the question of growing pains and when you get them and where it suits your future. And I think that sort of is in our minds with some of the pitchers after what happened when they came up. And will they be better off in 2022 and 2023 for more time here and with some struggles right away? I think you toss the coin. In my mind, though, at a certain point, one of the things the Royals have struggled with, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I'd be really interested to hear what you guys say about it again now, is guys that seem ready at AAA aren't quite ready here. What's the gap? What is it? And every case is different, but is there some pattern there, or is it just what we see in all development, Major League Baseball?
Well, in the case of Lynch and Kowar, a couple different things, right? In Lynch, they thought he was tipping the pitches. Go back to Omaha and work that out. Kowar, to me, was the bigger mystery of the two. There wasn't anything specific like that to pin it on, and I think of the class of 18 pitchers, he was the one who I believed would be most ready when he came. That doesn't mean he was going to have instant success, but to see him constantly miss high in the strike zone and not be able to make that adjustment, sitting in the press box and watching it or watching it on TV, it's one thing to yell and just why aren't you doing this? Why is it obviously wasn't happening to you in Omaha. Why is it happening in Kansas City? And I don't know why. I don't know why. And he doesn't know why. But Kowar went back to Omaha, and he's getting knocked around a little bit in Omaha too. So I don't know what the easy answer is, but I do believe that in a lost season, and you talked about manipulating service time, the Royals don't seem to play that game much. If they think they're better served by having somebody come up and play Major League Baseball and take his lumps and learn, they'll do that and say, darn the service time. So I think we're going to see Kowar and Lynch back in the Royals uniform, making starts maybe in September. The ones that I'm more interested in, though, the futures of like Jorge Soler and Gerard Dyson. What do we do? I think we're more than halfway through the season now, and Jorge Soler is not hitting. Got the double last night, but when was the last time he hit a home run? I mean, this guy, it seems to be a lost cause with him. So Lynn, what do you think about Soler? What are the futures of Soler and Dyson here?
Well, they're both. I mean, I guess when you say future, I mean, I guess how
Limited, I guess would be the first.
Well, I was gonna say, how far are you looking? I mean, because
Well,
they
this
could both
year-
be gone at the end of the season. So I mean, like that's. I mean, I don't think I wouldn't look past this season because there's nothing guaranteed for either one of them after this season. And I had always sort of thought that Soler probably, was gone after this season, and I maybe thought that he'd be a guy who would be a trade candidate when he, assuming that he was going to give some production this year. I don't know that now that there's
Right.
really any way to move him, but yeah, he seemed like sort of that prototypical, the guy that they move at the deadline to get something get something for him before he hits free agency. But I don't know that you're getting anything for him now. So, and also I just, I think I'd started to, I think it was last week, I'd started to go down this road and just sort of got lost. But I think the DH spot also, like when I think about Soler, I feel like having a DH spot that you can move around suits the Royals more anyway, especially when you're going to have, like Salvy's still played every game this year between DH and catcher, and they've needed that bat in there. And I think if you have that DH spot that you can move around, whether that means Salvy DH in some, whether that means Carlos Santana DH in some, and if that means you're putting Dozier at first, or Santana's still in the contract next year, if that means somebody like Pratto forces their hand, and you need another spot for him. Playing first base, or Santana playing first base and DH and moving somebody like O'Hearn. So I feel like that DH moving around is going to be something that really would help them. And obviously Soler has played some outfield, but they've got better options as far as defensively in the outfield, and you see that when they pull them out of the games late in the game. So I just don't know what that looks like at the end of this season in terms of if they're not playing him to play younger guys, if you get to that point in the season, or if, I don't know that they would just cut him loose, but I'm just not sure what that's going to look like, because I feel like there might be a point where you have, depending on what's going on at AAA, if that means, you got to take more of a look at, Edward Olivares, you got to take more of a look at Kyle Isbell. I mean, I'm not, there's plenty of guys that down in AAA or who are on the 40-man roster right now that maybe you need to find out more about late in the season. And at that point, I'm not sure what that means for Soler, if that just means that he's sitting on the bench or if they come to some other decision with him.
He pinch hit on Sunday, struck out to end the game, but he was on the bench on Sunday because it was a Salvy DH day. And Olivares is an interesting guy, too. I mean, guys, he's been 4 times, optioned back to Omaha in the month of June. I think we're going to see him, a more steady presence of him in the second half of the season. Just a guess. And Ryan O'Hearn in right field has been interesting to me. He's been playing right field in Omaha. He'd only played one major league game in right field up until Sunday, and he was the right fielder on Sunday.
I think he said on Sunday that the other time didn't have any balls hit to him.
Right.
On Sunday, that the one play in particular really stood out, the diving catch in front of him.
Really, really nice job.
Yeah.
And he went back for another
And
one
then,
on the warning track, made a really
Good
nice
jump
catch.
on it, yeah,
So
yeah.
at least in those 2 instances, he looked like he could play that position. And they want to take advantage of a guy whose bat it was hot enough that he was the AAA East Player of the Month, and then he comes back and he hits the home runs in New York and shows power, and so I think they want to give him a long look in the outfield too, and maybe he's a year ahead of, using your example of Nicky Lopez, which I thought was really good, right? That. Maybe it's time for Ryan O'Hearn to be a regular 25-man roster guy, or at least think about him in those terms.
It might be. It's just going to be a question of the guys who are coming behind that and what that roster is going to look like. What you're doing with some of these, whether it's Olivares or Isbell, or when Pratto comes knocking on the door, and you still have Santana under contract, and so that's the. I think the last part of the season might be just trying to find some of those questions out. And maybe that's, the last part of the season. You mentioned Olivares, and I'm just still wondering, like you said, maybe we see him more regularly. And I'm probably just going to cause trouble by mentioning this, but I'm thinking if Mondesi is healthy and on the field, then I don't know whether or not you have a whole lot of Olivares regularly, because maybe that means you have that Nicky Mondi up the middle, and then maybe you're playing Witt in the outfield, and then you have like a steady outfield, because you'd have Benny, Witt, and Taylor. Again, this is a whole lot of supposing, and this is a whole lot of,
With Dyson as your fourth outfielder. And
yeah, well, I mean, you could have multiple guys who are probably in that outfield mix, because you still have, depending on who goes down. I mean, if Dozier's still here, he's third base / outfield. If O'Hearn's still here, he can maybe play some outfield. If we're talking about Olivares is still around, so there's a lot of potential, scenarios there. It's just we don't know exactly what that roster is going to look like, and then somebody's going to be at AAA.
Yeah. And of course, AAA just means they want them to play every day. They want that person to and get 4 bats every night, and that's what Mike Matheny was telling us on Sunday after they had to option Olivares again. Olivares, look, you can be here and not play, or you can be in Omaha and play, and we need you to play. And it's like he's still Olivares apparently was kind of upset about. He had a home run on Saturday, his first home run of the year, and it gets sent down on Sunday. Look, but Benintendi was activated, right? You had to make room, and it was going to be an outfielder, and he was the logical choice. So. Some interesting decisions, I think, for the Royals in the second half. It'll be, they'll be an interesting team for that reason. Maybe a topic we'll get to next week or the week after is this year, which has become a lost cause, different than the lost cause years of the 100 lost seasons of 18 and 19, or even the ramp up years, Dayton's first few years in Kansas City. I'm kind of interested in that topic. One of the differences between then and now is they seem to have some, centerpiece type players in Perez. You can call Whit Merrifield that. All-star level players that back in the day, in tribute to All-Star Week that's approaching, you couldn't find an all-star. They had to come up with an all-star, and it was like, I guess, why not him? He's as good as anybody. But they do have all-stars on this team. It's just that they just can't put it all. They just can't put it all together, right? They hitting, pitching, bullpen starting. It's just not there. And we will get to. A lot of people are asking about the futures of Mike Matheny, of Dayton Moore. Let's end on this with this question. Nothing's happening to Mike Matheny, of course, this year. Vahe, we know Dayton Moore. He's gonna tough this thing out, isn't he? He spoke on Friday.
Yeah, 100%. My notion of it is that, and Dayton being Dayton. I mean, I'm not sure a lot of general managers make sure they make themselves available after that was what was it? 9 game losing streak.
Yeah, 9 game losing streak. Returned home for the first home game.
Make sure you're there, and there's a lot we don't know about behind the scenes, right? But I'm of the mind from people I've talked to in the past that there's fairly good alignment between Dayton and John Sherman for somewhat early in this relationship, and I think Dayton laid out a lot of reasons that will be unsatisfying to some people, but. If you went into the season, I think you had a legitimate reason to think Soler and Dozier would be more productive than they are. Certainly Brad Keller. You had, I guess, legitimate hope that Mondesi would be able to play. I wonder how different this team looks with those things, just 4 or 5 things being a little different. But every team goes through that, right? So their depth has been exposed. Excuse me. So I don't feel like he's in danger. I get why there's unrest, but I do think there's also reasons this season has gone differently than might have been expected. And I also don't think that anybody thought, other than me being ridiculously overly optimistic before the season, I was enjoying the idea that I was gonna be able to gloat when I said I thought they were gonna win about 84 or 85, and now I'm just having to own up. But I just think that it was not really thought this was the year they were going to, win the division, right? And that this was going to be another building block year. Problem is, it doesn't feel like much building. I mean, regardless of what you thought this year was, how it was going to connect to the future, this hasn't been anything promising at all.
Well, that's that thought connecting to the future. To me, that's what the second half of the season, for the most part, is going to be about. So, and your overly optimistic nature serves you well, Vahe. It really does. All right, so for Vahe and Lynn, I'm Blair. Beth Welsh was the producer, did a great job. Thank you so much for tuning in, and to Ann, Steve, Doug, Lars. Appreciate all your comments and questions. Good stuff. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us. That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian for stopping by and talking Royals. Links to stories about the Royals can be found in the show notes and, of course, on kansascity.com. Hey, here's another deal for you. You can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. Sports Pass is the online version of the Star Sports section. You get all the stories that appear in the print editions of the Star, plus additional stories that appear only on the website, and of course, they appear first on kansascity.com. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And it's a great time to subscribe. Read about what's going on with the Chiefs, the Royals, the colleges, our soccer teams, the Olympics, and more. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. You want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional national news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of the offers, you just send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I will get you the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another episode.